Hey, okay. So, for this project, this midterm project, I chose Traditional Irish Fiddle. And there's a bunch of interesting small things also in the instrument itself, which um, I'm comparing Irish Fiddle, Traditional Irish Fiddle to what my professor calls European art music, which is how we're taught in the US mostly, most of the US, to learn how to play violin, viola, and also like most of our concert band and orchestra instruments are taught this way. Which is and there's a whole spiel on why European art music is a better term than classical music or the classical way of playing. But anyways, so nowadays fiddle and violin are the same instrument, as in most people just buy a violin. There are differences in the past, and some people might get like a luthier, or which is a fancy word for the person that repairs instruments, to change their violin so that it can have the old properties which allow it to play its style easier. And Irish fiddle music style is very light. There's some slow songs, usually it's fast songs because it's meant to be danced to. And yeah, there's also this, they play a lot of double stops, which we also have in European music, European art music. But they play a lot of double stops, mainly as a drone. So what that means in music theory, but also what that basically means is you'll have like one string. So this is a G because I forgot my violin. Great. I left my violin at Temple. So this is a viola. But yeah, so if you have a song in G, in general, you're playing the drone or playing these two strings at the same time together I don't know, it's just the tonic or like the root note of the scale is always there. It adds an interesting texture. Yeah, and in that sense, also double stops that show up by accident. So like if you're playing and you accidentally hit another string, that's not illegal or bad news, unlike in European art music when you're trying to be very specific to whatever's written on the score. So like if you see a single note melody, you try to only play one note or one string at a time. You try not to hit multiple. Also, there's like differences in the instruments. So like in the past and now you can choose to find a luthier to help fix. So with fiddles, they generally have a flatter bridge. It can be higher up or lower, and that generally it's also lower. So that also means lower action. So, for example, this A string takes, I don't know, like half a centimeter to push down, but lower action just means it's closer to the fingerboard, which is the black ebony piece of wood that we try to press the string into, right, to make the string shorter, and so it makes a higher pitch. Yeah, so that action is lower, and also this is generally flatter, which makes it easier to play double stops. I don't know if I can show this easily. As in, it's not necessarily harder to play double stops on a modern violin or viola, but since it's more curved, it makes it easier to be accurate and play one string and you have to intentionally, I don't know, you have to intentionally move it to do a double stop, versus when it's flatter, you can imagine it's easier to play two strings at the same time. There's a lot. I made so many notes, you would know. And then there's small details that are interesting from like a sound perspective or as a composer. So for example, the lower action tends to make a mellower sound. So, or what you would describe as a darker sound. The other way I can describe it is think French horn versus trumpet. French horn is more mellow and then trumpet's more bright, quote unquote. Yes, what else? Like, clip out this pause while I try to... Yeah, so, yeah, higher action gives more volume and clarity compared to that more mellower, and it really helps, like with the lower action, it also helps playing double stops, because if you're holding two strings down at a time, because I mentioned before, like you can play one open string while playing a melody on the other, but if you have to hold both strings down, it's kind of a pain and it hurts over time, because for fiddle playing, you'll probably be like jamming out for hours on end. And it would be easier if the strings are close to the fingerboard if you're barring or holding two strings at once. Let's see what else. And what's interesting is both sides don't lean into their sound. So kind of thinking along the lines of how a trumpet jazz player would lean into how bright the sound is and play even brighter, or vice versa with the darker tone. For classical or European art music, higher action gives the brighter sound, right? But as a result, to combat that, we usually use synthetic core violin strings, which are like softer and make it like it levels it back out, and then vice versa. So for a traditional Irish fiddle, you'll have like, it's more mellow from the lower action and then the flatter bridge. And to combat this, to make it easier to play and also to make it not sound as mellow, they use steel core strings, which is I think what this viola has actually, because steel core makes it more bright, and so it like also evens it out. It went too dark and mellow and then you bring it back up. And then the last thing that I saw was bow tightness. So this is a viola bow, so it's gonna be just, everything's generally lower tension on a viola, but still, it really does change. I've saw like in general, it's a little bit looser, but it really doesn't matter, because I've seen some examples where traditional Irish fiddle players will play with a pretty tight bow. But as for like playing style and holding the instrument, the bow, it's basically the same grip as with European art music, so, which I don't have perfect, but this is the advanced bow hold that I'm working on, great. And then you're like rotating your hand in order to push the bow into the strings. But for Irish fiddle, it doesn't really matter the placement, but the bow hand shape is about the same. So it can be higher up, and it usually is higher up, but I've seen some play straight, like back here with the pinky on top of the screw, the nut, I forgot the name. That's the nut. I don't know what this is. But yeah, it's generally played farther up. I'm guessing I didn't do that much research into it, but I'm guessing it's similar to Baroque style where it allows you to play lighter and faster, because your hand is closer towards the balance point. The balance point is somewhere about a third of the way from this end of the bow up. It's where the bow balances, and the closer you get to there, the more it just feels like you're just kind of I don't your bow's like hovering. It's very fast. It allows you to play. Also, you're playing generally lighter and not pushing as hard into the strings. Probably because you're trying to aim for double stops a lot. And also, since they're steel wound, it will make up for the volume. And then, what else? Oh yeah, there's a bias towards single bowing, which I saw, which basically just means this like hooked bowing. Sorry. Versus generally most notes are single bowed or separate. What else? I don't know how long I'm supposed to be talking about this. This stuff, which is interesting and cool. Okay, I think I should just stop and just play an example. So this is I love that they call the pieces tunes. So this is an Irish fiddle tune. Yeah, so this tune is called Tilden to the White House. And I'm probably going to do multiple takes and cut the one that sounds the best. You know. I'm probably just gonna play the first two lines or the first, verse, I guess. And very slowly. Oh, I forgot to mention. So, contact point doesn't really matter. It's generally like halfway, actually. And also, they Irish fiddle players tend to play like lower. They still have the straight left hand and wrist and like left hand position, but they play lower lower on the shoulder, I guess is what I would say. And I feel like that's in contrast to European art music, where you play it really close up here and there's the three contact points with the jaw, the shoulder, and then the bottom part of the wood right next to the end button hitting the collarbone, right? This you're playing like very upright and you have to reach really far in order to hit the low notes, but here I think it allows you to play double stops easier and more comfortable for like hours on end, you know. Peter died. Okay. You're out of focus. Okay.